Hello, this is Cynthia Douthit, and I want to welcome you to session 4 of the book of Revelation. As I said, we're looking at chapters and events in the book of Revelation, and I'm continuing this about the Battle of Armageddon. Now, behind me, what you see is a frog, FROG-7. Now, this is a Soviet-made rocket, artillery rocket, and this is something that Syria used against Israel in 1973 during the Yom Kippur War, when they shot these rockets into the area of the Galilee, as well as targeting Ramat David Air Force Base, which we looked at in session 3, which is in the Jezreel Valley, which is where the Battle of Armageddon will take place. So one of the things I want to read is out of Revelation 16. And we're looking now at about verse 12, where the sixth angel has poured out his bowl on the great river Euphrates, where the waters dried up, in order to prepare the way for the kings from the east. And John says that he saw 3 unclean spirits that look like frogs. And they came from the mouth of the dragon, from the mouth of the beast, and the mouth of the false prophet. So here we see basically a false trinity, an evil trinity set up that is coming against Israel and God's people. As it goes on, it says, these are miracle-working demonic spirits which go out to the kings of the whole inhabited world to assemble them for the war of that great day of Adonai Zevaot. Now, Adonai Zevaot is the military name for Yeshua HaMashiach. And this is just happening as we're reading here in Revelation 16 about these frogs, these demonic, miracle-working demonic spirits that come out of the mouth of the dragon, the beast, and the false prophet. They are pictured as frogs. These unclean spirits look like frogs. And the next thing we see is it's talking about the Battle of Armageddon. Now, I find it very interesting that in 1973, the Yom Kippur War, the frogs actually were shot into the valley, Jezreel Valley. And these frogs were in the type of these Russian artillery rockets that Syria had acquired to go against God's people in the Jezreel Valley at Ramat David Air Force Base, where the Battle of Armageddon is going to take place. We'll look at a couple of more pictures here that you've seen the rockets. So we want to remind ourselves as to what this area looks like, and get the overall aerial view. That this is the aerial view that you can see. This is declassified. I didn't steal anything improperly or whatever, but this shows you, I'm always getting the wrong way, but this shows you an aerial view of Ramat David Air Force Base there in the valley, the Jezreel Valley, where the Battle of Armageddon is going to take place. Let me see if I can, there's the runways. There's 3 runways, 2 really long ones and 1 short one. And so this, I think, is very interesting that we have in Revelation 16:12 these 3 unclean spirits that look like frogs that are being that will get the kings of the world, the leaders of the world, to come to this valley that's behind me in this picture, where the Battle of Armageddon takes place. God really has some interesting ways. I think this is something that gets people interested maybe in looking at the book of Revelation about these Soviet frog-7. And of course, interesting when we look at these frogs, there's 3 of them, an evil, unholy trinity. And the missiles, the rockets that were used were frog, capital FROG-7, and of course 7 being the number of God. And that's really what Satan wants to be. He wants to be God. He wanted to be in the place of Yeshua as Savior of the world. And here he gets this unholy trinity to come against God and God's people. These missiles were fired at Ramat David Air Force Base that you can see behind me in northern Israel. This is the Megiddo airfield, and they carried high explosive warheads, and they missed virtually every one of their targets. And only one or two hit the base, but they didn't do anything to destroy anything that was vital to the protection and the security of Israel. Syria fired about 25 frogs, and only 2 or 3 caused any damage. And a couple of them were duds. They did try to shoot some of the other Air Force bases in Israel, and they didn't land. They were duds, or they hit another area, and 2 or 3 of them actually flew off course and landed in Jordan. So I thought you might enjoy just a little bit of this, looking at frogs have already entered the Valley of Armageddon in 1973 at the Yom Kippur War. But we see that in a future time, when the kings of the nations are being deceived by Satan, and these 3 demonic miracle working spirits that look like frogs that are coming out of the mouth of the dragon, the mouth of the beast, and the mouth of the false prophet. They are going to deceive many people, and the nations will be willing to go along with it because they view it as going against God and against God's people. And it's kind of that old idea that if you can control Israel, if you can control Jerusalem, if you can annihilate the people who love God, the Jewish people, then you can control God. And that's just not the case, because as we see, Yeshua comes back as Adonai Zevaot, the military man, with as Lord of hosts, as in a great army, and he will take a victory on that great day of the Battle of Armageddon. Thank you for joining me, and I hope you join me for session 5.